Hello, what is going on, everyone? Hope you are having a good and happy, what is it, Tuesday today? Good old Tuesday. Lots going on in the world, lots happening, but if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Maybe hit that like button, and hey, maybe even just leave a comment. Joining me on today's show is the one and only Kelly Cash. What's going on, Kelly?
Hey, good to be back, man.
Always good to have you on, man. How you doing?
Good, good. How are you?
Well, I'm drinking a lemonade and vodka here, so I'm doing good and on the road to feeling even
Nice.
better. Oh, yeah. What you got going on there?
I've got a sort of kind of Paloma. It has neither grapefruit soda nor tequila. It's prickly pear mix and sotol.
Sotol. Okay, interesting.
Yeah.
Right on. Yeah, it's you remember last week I was drinking that pink stuff.
Yes, yes. How did that turn out for you?
It worked out. I mean, it was awesome. It was good. I mean, yours look kind of pink there, at least on my monitor here.
Yeah,
Man.
it's pretty pink.
The pink drink is where it's at. I was trying to get pink drink for this one too, but I guess I ran out of slime, so
Yeah. Couldn't get any pink lemonade?
couldn't get any pink lemonade, man. What you gonna do? Maybe on the next show, next time.
There you go.
There we go. Well, all right. Let's get after it, man. So, have you ever heard that phrase that where there's smoke, there's fire? The idea is very simple. It's that if it looks wrong, it probably is. And to be honest with you, Republicans and Democrats have been using this logic to attack each other for years. Whether it's a laptop that supposedly belongs to the a presidential candidate's son, or someone using someone else's money to keep a porn star quiet about an alleged affair, it seems that both parties just kind of throw things out there and see what sticks. But when they actually agree on something, and that something wrong really happened, that's pretty rare.
Georgia's Secretary of State says fellow Republicans are pushing him to exclude legally cast votes and that he and his wife are getting death threats over it. Brad Raffensperger told the Washington Post that GOP Senator Lindsey Graham asked him if political bias could have led poll workers to accept absentee ballots with signatures that do not match. According to the Post, Senator Graham seemed to suggest that Raffensperger find a way to throw out legal ballots.
Yes, in case you missed that, find a way to throw out legal ballots. So Republican Senator Lindsey Graham calls a fellow Republican down in Georgia to see how he can get some of them ballots thrown out. And apparently, he made calls to Arizona and Nevada as well. Now, that might have been a mistake. According to, all right, here we're gonna go through this together. It's an interesting legal jargon. But according to Section 18 of the U.S. Code of the Constitution, whoever, now let's see if I can zoom in on this for you here. This is from Cornell University. Whoever, being a person employed in an administrative position by the United States government or by any department or agency, uses his official authority for the purpose of interfering with or affecting the nomination or the election of a candidate for office of president, vice president, presidential elector, member of the Senate, House, member of the House, blah, 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 lots of things, shall be fined under this title or imprisoned not more than 1 year or both. All right, so that's obviously very, very confusing legal jargon here. But Andrew Weissman, who worked on with Robert Mueller on his investigations, said this is what we in the legal world like to call a felony. So Kelly, did Lindsey Graham just break the law?
It certainly sounds like he was suggesting ballots that should legally be counted be tossed. If that's the impression the Georgia Secretary of State was getting, then, he doesn't really have a political axe to grind. He's another Republican. He's not from another wing of the party or anything like that. So it certainly sounds like Lindsey Graham could be in a little bit of hot water here. Ratzenberger, he wasn't the only one on this call. He said he had staffers on there. They talked about it, discussed it before, telling the media about this, to really make sure that's what was being suggested. I think Lindsey Graham could be in some hot water here.
Absolutely, and there's a lot of folks, on the call with him, so potentially a lot of witnesses there, and the FBI did announce they are actually looking into this.
Yeah, and he made calls to Arizona and Nevada as well. He first said that those were to the Secretary of State's there. Then the one in Arizona comes out and says, well, I never talked to Lindsey Graham. And then all of a sudden, Graham's changing his story, saying, well, I talked to Governor Doug Ducey and someone else in Nevada. Notably, the Secretary of State in Arizona is a Democrat. Doug Ducey is a Republican. So if Graham was just going around calling just the Republican Secretary of States and then skipping over those in other areas, going for other Republican officials, that certainly makes this look a lot more fishy. Graham has come out and said that this was just him, looking into election integrity, but that certainly doesn't sound above board if you're going to Secretary of States who are only with your party and then going to elected officials that are over them if that Secretary of State is a Democrat.
Absolutely. One thing I definitely don't want to kind of gloss over here is the idea that this, guys getting death threats because Trump won't just man up and accept the results of the election.
Yeah, and this also calls into question, Graham's own election. Now people are saying, well, did he put this kind of pressure on South Carolina's Secretary of State or other elected officials there? Did he try to, cook the books, I think is what a lot of people are asking. He had a strong challenger in Jamie Harrison. It's the first time he's ever faced a real challenger since being elected. And, he really, kind of overperformed expectations. So I don't think that even, a little bit of cooking the books would have changed the outcome of the election. People are now certainly questioning whether that's what he did.
Absolutely. And the big, loser here in all of this is the faith and integrity of our election system. It just seems like they're constantly adding things, making things seem, like they're not above water when by a large part this election was, very successful and one of the most above water elections of all time.
Like we talked about before, Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick put out this tweet saying he'd pay $1 million for evidence of voter fraud, and then his counterpart in Pennsylvania, the lieutenant governor there, pulled up a couple of Republicans who had committed voter fraud in favor of President Trump, and that those were the only two people Pennsylvania had discovered out of some 6 million ballots, I think. So
yep, and
it's
I don't know about you, but that $1 million, man, I would have started trying to find as much voter fraud as I could because a lot of money.
Yeah.
But
and
that takes us to our...
Go ahead, sorry.
I was going to move on to the next story, but what else you got there, Kelly?
I was going to say just the one last thing is that, can you imagine if this was a Democrat who had done this? If a Democrat we found out had been, asking the Secretary of State in another state to toss ballots, this would be the Benghazi hearings all over again. It would be on TV 24/7. There'd be congressional hearings. And I think this is just going to get kind of swept under the rug. Maybe this is where there's smoke, there's fire. Maybe there's just smoke and no real problem thanks to people like Ratzenberger who weren't going to toss legal ballots. But, you really kind of got to question, what's going on here.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, man. Because, it's just kind of it seems like there's a lot going on there, and hopefully we'll have a good new Department of Justice kind of taking over this come January 20th. But that does kind of move me along to my next story here. So there's a lot of talk about truth decay nowadays. But we should also mention short memories. Republicans were all up in arms after President Obama did this just a couple years ago.
I can report that, as promised, the rest of our troops in Iraq will come home by the end of the year.
Now, Republicans were honestly worried about Iraq having a weak government. And you know what? They were right. So if you look at a map of the beautiful country of Iraq, here's what you find here. See if I can blow that up there for you. That is what Iraq looked like. And, when we left Iraq, the United States had control of the country. And just a few short years after we left, Iraq kind of looked like this. And as you can see, the middle part of the country there, the extra tan part there, are areas of the country that were controlled by ISIS. See, what had happened was Bush agreed to pull troops out of Iraq, and then Obama just kind of went with that plan. Now, after our troops left, there was a power vacuum, and ISIS took over. The thing is, and just today, Trump announced that a lot of the troops that we sent in to fight ISIS and to get control of the country are now coming back home. And the problem is, there doesn't seem to be any clear plan on what that means going forward. There doesn't seem to be any clear plan on, okay, is Iraq in a good, safe place to make sure ISIS can't gain another foothold? Another group like ISIS can gain another foothold? And so again, it comes to the U.S. approaching Iraq and Afghanistan without a clear plan. And part of this does make me wonder that, if Joe Biden does take office and things are looking bad in Iraq and he has to send troops back over there, if really Trump is just doing this to make Biden look bad politically. But what are you thinking is going on here, Kelly?
I think there is a possibility that is the case, that the president is doing this to make it harder on his successor. He made this a campaign promise in 2016, did not follow through on getting the troops out of Afghanistan and Iraq, although, of course, there's a lot of debate over whether or not, that's the right thing. There's debate over, whether the previous pullout was designed to hurt President Obama. There's, debate over whether that pullout led to the rise of ISIS, whether anything would have been different had those troops been there. This latest pullout is going to take 2,500 troops out of the theater, 2,000 from Afghanistan, where there are currently 4,500 stationed, and 500 out of Iraq, where there are 3,000 stationed. I think this is such a complex situation. You have some people saying this is just posturing, no matter how much you look at it, that 500 guys isn't that much one way or another in Iraq, that this really won't have that much effect, other than just making training of Afghan forces and Iraqi forces less effective. But there is, real concern that we are going to run into another situation where pulling troops out makes the area more vulnerable. We've seen the Taliban really picking up steam once more in Afghanistan, violence increasing again in Afghanistan. The treaty talks have gone away. And so I don't think this is really the time to be pulling troops, as the Taliban try to go into the next administration here with a stronger bargaining position.
Absolutely. Now, this is probably a horrible joke I shouldn't make, but Trump's got a lot of kids. You probably shouldn't trust him with the pullout method anyway. But, I saw someone that was a parent of a veteran who he was fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, saying that they're glad that they're pulling, all these troops out. But I'm kind of wondering, if you're still a troop there, will that make this like a more of a dangerous situation? Because this definitely seems like a political move. I don't think it's a coincidence this happened like a week or so after Trump fired Mark Esper, or he was forced out of the administration, whatever you want to call it, and then his successor, a guy who is not confirmed by Congress, just does this immediately, just seems very political to me.
Yeah, I mean, it has the reek of another political move, like a lot of the stuff we're seeing here in the transition period. Whether it's President Trump trying to hurt the next man coming in, or whether he's trying to give the appearance of having delivered on his 2016 campaign promise. It's hard to say. Again, you have people saying that this really isn't going to affect that much, that it's more a political issue. It's more about the appearance of things than it is the actual numbers. But, and I mean, there's a lot of debate, altogether of whether or not we should be there. There are now people whose, I think they've read a story recently about a serviceman over in Afghanistan who's now serving where his father served. This war has been going on for a very, very long time.
Very long time. And I certainly get the aspect of asking the question, should we be over there in the first place? Should we have gone over there in the first place? Should we be there now? And I definitely think this is kind of, a lot of, political kind of red meat, and basically saying, okay, Trump just kind of ended all the BS and just stopped it. I think, this kind of the thing I worry about is it just kind of follows a pattern of horrible foreign policy decisions by Trump. I can remember when he killed General Soleimani and how that really kind of changed our relationship within Iraq. So much so that they wanted to kick us out of the whole country. And so I think what I really worry about happening here is less of a vacuum for something like ISIS to come back, but more of a vacuum for Iran to come in and become a closer tie with Iraq. So it's, in essence, we spent, billions of dollars, lost thousands of Americans' lives, thousands of Iraqi lives, and all that we've really done is make a stronger ally for Iran in the Middle East.
Yeah, I mean, that's what people have been saying for the entirety of the Iraq War. I mean, for a long time, Iraq and Iran, different sides of the religious spectrum, constantly at one another's throats, several wars back and forth. And, now there's no longer that religious minority government in Iraq, opposing Iran. So it's always been a huge question of whether we should have gone in and taken out the main threat to a rival like Iran. And there's really no good answer there, especially after we found out the WMDs was a lie. It kind of seems like we went into Iraq on a lie, bad political motivations, and we're still seeing the ramifications of that, from the Bush administration, the last Republican administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's just, it's a shame that we're still over there so many years later. I've never figured out a good way to get out, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't get out, but what I'm saying is that we should do it in like a good planned way, not just to piss off the next administration.
Yeah, I mean, and there's, so much debate over what's the right way to do it. Will there ever be that moment that is the right moment, or are we just going to, forever be there? When do we see, when do we say, okay, now we're drawing down to more like Germany, where we still have troops to this day, or, at what point do we call it, the war over with? Because the Iraq war over and done with, at least on paper. Although, of course, after ISIS, we brought in thousands more troops, and it seems kind of like we're now back where we were in the Obama years. Yeah, to some extent.
Pretty much. I mean, at least Trump could have landed on an aircraft carrier like Bush and went out the cool way, but
had a big banner, supported all those great banner makers
that was a nice
out
banner.
there.
Oh, nice banner. So that kind of brings me to our next topic here. And I want to start it out with a question. So, why do politics matter? I mean, that's a question I get asked all the time, and people always talk about that. People who aren't interested in politics at all, like, why does any of this stuff actually matter? But before we get to that, we got some very, very good news to report.
With that new hope in the battle against the coronavirus, 1 week after that news from Pfizer, tonight news on a second vaccine. Moderna announcing its vaccine is nearly 95% effective.
There is not only one, but two vaccines for COVID-19 that could be over 90% effective, which means we could finally be getting an end date to this pandemic. But there's just one little problem to figure out.
Set a very aspirational goal of 70% of the adult population being vaccinated within 6 months.
Has Operation Warp Speed given you any indication of how many doses of vaccine you're going to get?
The assumption is about 100,000. If it's a 2-dose regimen, that will be separated into 2 doses, so it would be 50,000 individuals.
And how many people do you have in that high priority healthcare worker category?
500,000.
You're not even close.
No.
Not even close. So, the vaccine will take a couple weeks to get approval because they need to still monitor all the folks who took it to test it, make sure it's safe. And then it could be 6 months before a vaccine could be distributed, best case scenario. And there's still a very, very big question of who will actually take it. It's been interesting. They've done polling on this issue, and they're finding even in that same 60 Minutes segment there, they found that even healthcare workers were not very keen on taking a vaccine. Now, this whole process would probably go just a little bit smoother if the next leader of the free world could actually get involved. But by refusing to concede, Trump isn't just saving his ego from admitting defeat, he's also actively undermining the Biden administration and their efforts to end this pandemic. And so this has affected everyone, right? The COVID-19 thing has affected everyone, on the entire globe. So when someone says politics doesn't matter, and they're like, they want to go to the bar, they want to go to their favorite go see a concert, they want to go see a movie, and they can't because they're shut down. Think of this kind of crap right here, especially if the vaccine rollout doesn't go as planned. But yeah, Kelly, does what does this kind of make you think about the potential vaccine rollout and how this is being delayed because of, let's be honest, a bunch of bullshit?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of problems ahead. The biggest is, getting people to take this vaccine. So even if it comes out, it's amazing. These vaccines are great, even if we can get them to people, which would be another problem. How do we get people to take this? How do we get enough people to take this vaccine to slow the spread of this virus and knock it out? Because right now we're in free fall, and people have a lot of questions about this virus and this vaccine. And, some of the questions about the vaccine are warranted. People don't want to be guinea pigs. They don't want, some of them are concerned that this process has been rushed because of the speed which companies are going to create this vaccine. But, this is also a country with a very high resistance to taking vaccines. There's the whole anti-vaxxer movement, and getting those people on board with taking the vaccine is going to be important. And if the outgoing president, says, okay, Biden's taken office, don't trust these vaccines, don't take them, and the Republican administration follows President Trump on that, that's going to be a massive problem. That's the number one problem I see moving forward.
Absolutely. And There's definitely, yeah, a lot of people have a lot of distrust over the vaccine. I mean, I was very worried when they were talking about trying to rush it out before the election. And I've actually done segments where they're trying to essentially undermine the FDA to just approve it, even though, it looks like it's going to be safe, but it's just kind of, the idea is perception for a lot of people is reality. And unfortunately, the Trump administration has been going around trying to make it seem safe for political reasons. And by doing that, they're undermining, people's confidence in the vaccine in general.
Yeah. I mean, I think you have one side of the aisle, those efforts, undermine confidence, and then the other side of the aisle, what if they stop making those efforts, stop telling those people it's safe? Then these people have the normal resistance to vaccines. If the president suddenly changes his mind and says, "Oh no, I'm not president anymore. It's not safe," that's going to cause a problem. And that's not the only problem here. Just getting the vaccine out is going to be a huge issue. I mean, that segment you just showed, I mean, that's 50,000 is a drop in the bucket for what we need. We are no longer in the outbreak stage. We are no longer in a trending poorly stage. We are in free fall. It's bad everywhere. And This is going to take a very, very long time to get better. So even if they can produce the number of vaccines we're going to need to get all Americans, or at least most Americans, vaccinated, then they're going to have to put those out. President Trump has repeatedly said he would use a military rollout. We're now hearing from infectious disease experts who are saying, don't put too much faith in that. Those military rollouts are meant for hotspots. They are not meant for countrywide efforts. And they're saying that, like you were talking about earlier, Mark Espert over at the DOD, was just forced out. That's going to complicate things. There's going to be a lot of problems getting this vaccine out to everyone. So really, I think it's more the indications we're seeing from Biden and his coronavirus team that he's putting together, that it's going to be a lot more regulations on wearing masks, a lot more regulations on cracking down on large gatherings. And that's really how we stop this. Nobody wants to see another full-on lockdown, but, restaurants are saying that, the lockdowns aren't what kill us. We get, insurance payouts in some cases, other ones stimulus money, but it's, even if you're at 50% capacity and you can't get that number of people in your restaurant, that's what kills you.
Absolutely. And it's been very interesting to me that I think a lot of time was wasted in this pandemic during these lockdowns, trying to fight the government, because unfortunately we had a Republican government when it happened, and Democrats set aside a lot of money because they knew, honestly, you can't ask businesses to shut down and not give people any way to support themselves. You can't just, no business can shut down just indefinitely. I thought it was very surprising. Even Disney, which has been one of the most successful, businesses, corporations in the entire world, for the first time in like 40 years, they posted like a loss. It was a multi-billion-dollar loss. And so my hope is that if we do get a Democratic Congress, get a Democratic president, well, I should say we're going to have one. I don't care what this vote count and stuff is all about. But yeah, that we could maybe see, okay, let's fight all this together, right? Like, if we are going to shut down again, which would be best for public health, at least these businesses can get money to survive.
Yeah, I think under the new president, we're going to see a second stimulus. The real question, there's two main questions, I guess. First, with that second stimulus, is it going to be a small one-time payout like the first one, or is it going to be a large payout like we saw in some European countries, where they paid companies to stay closed, where they paid people to stay home? Are we going to see something like that with a much larger amount of money, or are we going to see another similar effort pushed by Democrats, similar to the first stimulus bill? And then, of course, the second question is whether or not they can get that passed. it's hard to see the political support for blocking that. I mean, if Democrats even if they don't control the Senate, if they just bombard Republicans with, blocking that stimulus bill, it's going to become politically tenuous for them at some point.
Absolutely, and I hope so. That is definitely my hope. But sometimes, Democrats figure a way to not figure it out.
And we've seen in the past where Democrats are much more willing to compromise. Republicans, like being able to declare victory no matter what happens. They've consistently opposed something only for Democrats to get it done. Really, the only time we haven't seen Democrats, compromising is when President Obama had that supermajority and they got the American Care Act, that the ACA passed, Obamacare. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the next stimulus bill. But to go back to talking a little bit about the vaccines themselves, there's a new push by the Trump administration to lower drug prices, which is great for us, great for Americans. But it now appears to be a politically motivated push to punish those companies, Pfizer, Moderna, for announcing their vaccines after the election, after it already looked like Biden had won. They're now looking at putting into place a most favored nation rule, which would force drug companies to sell to us at prices comparable to comparable European countries. And if anybody knows anything about European medicine can tell you it's a lot cheaper over there. It's cheaper basically everywhere in the world than here. So it would be great for the average American. It's just bizarre that we're going to have a possibility of finally getting this. It's something Trump had campaigned on. It was very popular. I've heard people saying to me, oh, this is why I like him. He lowered drug prices for me and my family. So it's bizarre to think that, he might follow through on one of his more popular campaign ideas as a way to punish drug companies. It also really makes you wonder whether he's doing the troop pullouts, politically setting himself up as, his relevancy, through the next 4 years of the Biden administration, as he prepares to run again in 2024.
Yeah, that's kind of what it seems like. Just kind of looking from an outside perspective for sure. And yeah, it's just, it's another thing of him just not taking the pandemic seriously. Because, even if he wants to publicly put out there that he's, not conceding and that he hasn't lost, the fact that he's setting up the next administration to, have to figure it out just kind of seems pretty shitty. But to move on to our next story here about, Democrats trying to figure it out. And there's been something I haven't been able to figure out, right? Something that's been bothering me this whole the past couple weeks around the election. And maybe we can figure it out through this. So Democrats have all been riding with Biden now, but that wasn't always the case.
Vice President Biden, you're just simply inaccurate in what you're describing. We will ensure that everyone has access to health care. Your plan, by contrast, leaves out almost 10 million Americans.
President, you can't have it both ways. You invoke President Obama more than anybody in this campaign. You can't do it when it's convenient and then dodge it when it's not.
When you said when a woman works outside the home, it's resulting in, quote, the deterioration of family. That we are avoiding, these are quotes. It was the title of the op-ed.
During the Democratic primary, challengers took shot at whoever was on top of the polls until that leader started to come down and that challenger started to rise. And Biden was no exception to this. And things started to really go bad for the former vice president after this.
We begin with Bernie's big win. Senator Bernie Sanders taking the Nevada Democratic caucus.
We have a projected winner tonight that's just in right now. ABC News reporting Bernie Sanders, according to the vote that has been reported by New Hampshire, he's the projected winner tonight.
And so after the first couple states called their primaries, it all came down to South Carolina for Biden's campaign. And really, it came down to one Democratic congressman. Congressman Jim Clyburn had to make a choice. He could support the other Democrats who seemed to be taking away with the nomination, or he could save Biden's campaign. And here is what he chose to do.
We know Joe, but most importantly, Joe knows us.
That's right.
Biden went on to win the Democratic nomination, with some help from maybe the party. But that's a whole nother story. Democrats then all came together, liberals, progressives, and moderates, to beat Trump. And they did, despite whatever his election kind of, all that stuff he's trying to spin about election fraud. Joe Biden did win the election. And, they did. And all Democrats and, everyone on the left all came together. But in the long run, is that actually going to hurt Democrats?
We keep making that mistake, this foolishness about you got to be this progressive or that progressive. That phrase, defund the police, cost Jamie Harrison tremendously. Now, I'm not saying it was the only problem.
You sound kind of mad, Congressman. It sounds like you're blaming the more...
Yes, that is Congressman Clyburn on Axios talking about how the party moving so far to the left, moving so progressive, may have hurt them in the long run. Now, he was very keen to not blame progressives, but he said that you have to be realistic in the district that you're in. And so, Democrats won the presidency. They lost seats in the House, and they're probably going to lose the Senate. So by not pushing back on some of the more progressive ideas like defund the police, Medicare for all, packing the court, and of course the big boogeyman there, socialism, did that ultimately end up costing Democrats in the long run? Because Biden will more than likely have a divided government to deal with, so a lot of his policy positions that he wants to go forward with probably aren't going to happen if Democrats take both Senate seats in Georgia.
So a tremendous amount to unpack there. Start back at the primaries where we see Biden, under attack in the debates. He was always going to be, one of the guys to go after. We saw Bernie Sanders winning those races, and then, you see this enormous shift after that South Carolina primary. But, fact of the matter is there's more, votes there, in South Carolina. There's, greater electoral college value and greater popular vote value. Bernie Sanders was relying on turning out primarily young voters, a hard to turn out group, predominantly young white voters. Didn't have great outreach to black voters who are, one of if not the strongest pillar of the Democratic Party.
And he
Joe
tried.
Biden,
he was talking to Cardi B, I remember.
Yeah. Joe Biden made the outreach. Of course, as Cory Booker said, he got his chance to mention Barack Obama's name every possible chance he could. But Biden is, he's a guy who's been in the party a long time. He's been in politics a long time. He got, Clyburn on his side, who people say, may just be the last true kingmaker in politics. And you don't get to be a kingmaker by being part of the progressive wing or part of the more right wing. You have to be at the center of the party. If you're looking at somebody who's the offshoots, that's going to be more like the Freedom Caucus, which just have power, but certainly not that much, or, a AOC and the squad, nothing like the political power that Representative Clyburn has. But obviously, the guy is not progressive by the standards, we're going to, use for the average politician. So, breaking all of that down, but I think when we talk about whether progressive policies cost Democrats in this election, and I think there's two ways to look at it. There's Representative Clyburn saying, the phrase defund the police hurt Jamie Harrison, stuff like that. People saying that
horrible. They should have figured out a way to put that a little bit better.
Right. I mean that it's an unpopular slogan.
Reform
to be
the police has a good ring to it.
Yeah. But I think for a lot of people, it's come in asking for $100, talk them down to $50 for something you paid for $25. I think that's where a lot of people start with the defund the police. You buy it at $25. You want to, you say, hey, you can buy it off of me for $100, but they talk you down to $50. They think they got a great deal, but in reality, you doubled what you made. So I think if we're looking at just that, we're saying did these more progressive ideas, did these more socialist ideas hurt Democrats who weren't running on them? That is going to be a very hard to answer question. But we are seeing, pushback to that. We are seeing people saying, well, I live in South Carolina. That's not what attack ads on Jamie Harrison focused on. A lot of them are saying, I don't think it cost him that much. They're saying that's not even what Republicans focused on attacking him for. And if we look the other half of this, if we look on who actually ran on those progressive ideas, for all of the Green New Deal supporters, who are running for office this time around, I think one lost and something like over 100 won re-election. So no, I don't think these progressive ideas hurt the Democratic Party. Obviously, if you're in a progressive area, run progressive campaign. I think James Clyburn is, again, he's at the center of the party. You're not going to hear a lot of progressive support from Clyburn, even though, he might be the last, kingmaker in politics.
Yeah, I don't know. It seems like Trump's positioned himself to be a kingmaker. We'll see. But, I can agree with some of that and some of what you're saying. But in general, I am also very, I try to pay attention to both sides. I try to see what Republicans are talking about. And a lot of folks who were Republican anyway, they weren't going to jump on any of these Democratic liberal ideas. I mean, Democrats could be positioning so total socialism, and that's not what they're doing, but it doesn't matter to Republicans. They're going to support them anyway because they're Democrats. But I did have to wonder if people on the fringes, I saw a lot of folks talking about, okay, maybe I like some of the Democratic stuff, but I don't like all the looting, I don't like all the rioting, all this stuff. I don't like the defund the police stuff. It's just kind of like it allows conservatives and Republicans to paint the Democratic Party as batshit crazy. And that, from a lot of folks who don't pay attention to politics, who don't look into politics, that could be a very effective message.
Yeah, to that point, though, you have, Beto O'Rourke saying, they're going to come out and they're going to call us socialists. They're going to tar us with every name you can think possible. So why not run on what we want to run on? Why not run on what we think makes the country better? Because regardless of how socialist our party is, how socialist our policies are, they're still going to get tarred that same way. So, I think it's, it's like you said, you could be offering total socialism and Republicans would treat it the same way they do any other Democratic policy. I think you're going to get tarred with that no matter what you're doing. So I think
and
Democrats,
the hard part about it is,
I believe in what O'Rourke said, swing for the fences, run on what you want to run on. If it works, it works, but don't allow that criticism to weigh you down.
It's one of those things, and I definitely agree. That's how it should be. I mean, absolutely. There's no really debating that. I kind of think back to something Rick Wilson said, and he's part of the Lincoln Party now, Lincoln Project now, excuse me. And it's one of those interesting kind of things. Lincoln Project, I've been working on wanting to do a segment around them because in some ways they're now to fight Trump, but they're kind of fighting the beast that they helped create. But the thing is with them, Rick Wilson said that the problem with Democrats is they're running boutique ads in a Walmart country. You know? Like, people aren't really looking into that stuff that deeply, right? That, you know, they're not really trying to figure out all of these issues. Like, for a lot of Americans, it's just about, like, okay, how much money am I bringing home? What are my taxes like? It's all about them. And even Beto, I mean, he shot for the rooftops when he said, okay, we're gonna come take your guns. And that kind of ended his political career. And so I'm definitely with the idea of that, like, okay, we should try to be all about our platform, all about our ideas, but practically, like, you have to understand, like, how is that gonna be a good message for the Democratic Party moving forward? Because it's hard to argue with the results now. I mean, there's the pandemic, there's Trump, there's the chaos of the last 4 years, and when it's all said and done, Democrats lost seats.
So, again, a lot to break down, but on the last point, I would say, you know, they picked up a historic number of seats in the last election. You know, they had, you know, a blue wave, and again, this time I think we saw a blue wave, but we also saw a red wave at the same time. We saw a historic turnout for both parties. So I think a bit harder to quantify the results of this election. But I think that, you know, AOC came out and said, you know, of the candidates who took our help, you know, pretty much all of them won. I think the problem for the Democratic Party is not messaging. I don't think that's their issue. I think their issue is campaigning. I think their issue is maybe putting out their message. And, you know, when they have a popular policy, getting people to realize, hey, this is just free money or free puppies or whatever. You know, it's not what Fox News is telling you. It's not this, it's not that. This will help you. It's not going to negatively affect things. I think they need to do a better job of that. But I think, you know, they have much larger issues with campaigning than they do with progressive policies. You know, I mean, AOC was saying, like, you know, look, we would have come to you, given you free help, you know, even if you didn't want me there personally, if you didn't want my name on anything, you know, I would have, you know, given you digital help, given you help, you know, knocking on doors. But you know, if you're gonna turn down help, you're gonna turn down help. Also, you know, with Beto, I don't think his political career is over by any means. You know, we've seen a lot of talk about him in Texas, considering the guy wasn't running and Texas really wasn't that close in the end. But I think, you know, he showed that during his run that turning out Democratic voters helped him a whole lot more than trying to convert conservative-leaning independents did in Texas. Very similar to Karl Rove's strategy that formed the modern Republican Party of diverting away from independents and towards the base, focusing on turning out that base, turning out those numbers, getting people who don't vote to vote. You know, I mean, of course, that's how we got the Republican Party we have today. So I don't know how much we want to have Democrats try the same strategy. You know, things are pretty partisan as is. And then to your earliest point about the Lincoln Project, you know, him saying, you know, boutique messaging for a Walmart audience, you know, the results the Lincoln Project got in this election, again, very hard to quantify things, especially, you know, something like that in an election this large with such high turnout. But, you know, they got very, very little in the way of success of turning, you know, conservative leading independents towards Biden compared to the efforts of Stacey Abrams in Georgia, you know, turning Georgia blue since the first time since Clinton won Georgia. much more effective getting those Democratic voters, people who would vote Democrat to actually vote, seems to be much more successful. Seems more like the Lincoln Project was trying to sell Cowboys jerseys in Philadelphia.
Yeah, that with the numbers definitely. The ads are great. They put together great ads, but I wonder how effective they really were. Because there's different messaging for different parties, different people.
Yeah, I think never Trumpers like him. I think that boomer Democrats who are going to vote Democrat no matter what liked him, but I don't think the ads did a very good job of convincing anybody to change their mind. I think it was more for the the Twitter crowd, the whole inside baseball bunch.
Yeah, it definitely. I like the ads they put together, but I just feel in this election, people were voting for and they figured that out months and months and months ago. But I still can't help but feel like, okay, they chose Biden as president, but they were like, we're not sold enough on the Democratic Party to give them like full control, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and I think the Lincoln Project. Now, where does all that money they didn't spend go? Are we gonna see them start funneling that into attacks on Biden in a couple of years from now, or in the world we live in a couple of months? We'll have to kind of wait and see.
Yeah, pretty much, man. But it's definitely gonna be interesting going forward for sure. I did have one other thing I wanted to throw your way. Some breaking news if you're down. Okay. So, it has been revealed that the whistleblower for the Republicans, or I should say Donald Trump's election fraud claims, and we're finally able to hear from her now.
We keep making that mistake.
So I worked a 24-hour shift. I started at 6 a.m. and I got off at 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. The next day. So I started at 6 a.m. November 3rd, got off at 6 a.m. November 4th. So I was there during their day shift and their night shift. The city provides the workers with food for their shift. Well, they only had enough food for 1/3 of their workers.
Boy.
So that is the reason why they were claiming that these vans were brought in. But these vans did not have food taken out of them.
And the vans that showed up, they were supposed to be filled with food. What did they have in them? Do you know?
I never saw anything being brought out of the vans. I know that whatever was being brought out of the vans was being brought out of the back of the vans, but I was not allowed over in that area at all. But the vans were definitely not big enough to be carrying enough food for 2/3 of those workers.
The vans weren't big enough. We finally have a face for election fraud in America, and this also comes after another person went on Lauren Ingram's show on Fox News and said that a Biden van pulled up, the big Biden sticker on the side, and all of a sudden they start pulling envelopes out and then pulling ballots out and then they bring the ballots in. Which I don't know about you, Kelly. I'm not a criminal mastermind, but if I'm gonna commit a crime, I'm not gonna get a van with my logo on the side of it.
Right, you wouldn't show up in a van with a giant crime on the side of it, would you?
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not a mastermind. I don't know how this is done. I don't know how this works, but I feel like that's not a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen over and over again these whistleblower, so-called these claims of election fraud are absolutely ridiculous. We saw one guy who, they tracked him down, started talking to him. He said, well, I was pressured into this statement. And he took it all back. We saw another person who was, saying, well, they were using sticky notes, and And then people are like, what? And, we saw the Sharpie gate in Arizona where it's, oh, the Sharpies don't really work. And then the officials were saying, no, Sharpies absolutely work. They're the best thing for the system. These claims have just been ridiculous. I mean, that's why they've gone something like, it's hard to keep up, the pace they're losing election lawsuits, 6, 7, 9 in a single day. Judges have tossed this stuff because, they're saying this is hearsay of hearsay, or, stuff like that, that I saw some vans, or, there was this station that was saying, oh, here's, people are saying there's the suspicious man taking this equipment inside. And then, the station came out and said, he's not suspicious. He's our photographer. That's a camera and the rest of his equipment he's taking inside. Yep. We know him. These claims have nothing behind them.
I know. You could think that they could figure out something better to just throw out there. But yeah, it's insane just how much bullshit is going around. I mean, really, and it's funny how they get to a court of law, and obviously a judge is like, I'm not putting up with this kind of bullshit. And so these lawsuits are getting thrown out left and right. They're just kind of like, well, yeah, we want to sue because this election is fraudulent. And the judge is like, well, show me some evidence. And they're like, well, we don't have any evidence.
Yeah, I mean, and we saw that with the poll, the Republicans saying that people verifying the ballots weren't allowed to, stand close enough or what have you. And then the judge saying, well, how far were they? 50 feet, 100 feet? And they were 6 feet away. And it's like, oh, come on, man. Like, what about, what more do you want? Like,
exactly. And it's like,
you're not the one actually looking at the ballot. You're looking at the people looking at the ballot.
Exactly.
It's a pandemic.
These poll watchers, they're saying they're keeping the Republicans out, and they're like, no, they're in there. And they're standing next to the Democratic poll watchers doing the same thing. And it doesn't make sense. Like, look, if Democrats are trying to really rig this election, how did Lindsey Graham get reelected? How did Mitch McConnell get reelected? And how did they lose seats in the House?
Yes, yeah. I think that's the best argument here. Again, I'm not a guy who does crimes. I'm not a big crime doer, but if I was going to commit election fraud, I'd go big or go home. I wouldn't be like, oh, let's just win the presidency. We'll lose some seats in the House. We'll, lose the Senate. But just the presidency. That's fine. I mean, no one's going to commit massive election fraud on a nationwide scale and not try to take you just wouldn't do that. It's like knocking over the federal mint to, steal the vending machine. Like,
makes no sense. And I was trying to get through to one of my Republican friends because I explained to him that, okay, you might think the media is corrupt, Fox, NBC, CBS, whatever, right? But the thing is, I kept trying to explain to him is that, the media is a very vast kind of thing. Like, we worked at an ABC news station together back in the day. And it's one of those things where it's like, people don't realize that the media, there's people in local markets, local journalists. And so this idea that there's this massive liberal conspiracy, media conspiracy, which is very funny because a lot of these big corporations are owned by people who are not liberals. But it's like the idea that local reporters are not going to report on election fraud is ridiculous. Yeah. I mean, it's like, we know a lot of reporters, and we were making that little back in the day. It's like, I'm lucky to make 35, 40 grand maybe. Is that enough money to keep your mouth shut about some massive crazy fraud? I don't think so.
Yeah, I mean, treating the media as a monolith has always been, a ridiculous idea. It's like, I mean, everything is full of oversimplifications. That's how the world works. When we say the military, we typically mean, the Army or, the Marines and their ground-based operations. We're not saying, you wouldn't blankly refer to the Coast Guard as, just the military, despite them being a military branch. You wouldn't act like Space Force is the entire military. And that's, those are at least apples to pears. the media, local media to, Fox News or even, NBC, we're talking apples and engine parts, and there's just not a vast conspiracy among media people would be, just having worked in it, they don't have that kind of organizational skill.
No, I mean, it's just, and trying to get my friend to understand just how much it would take to organize thousands and thousands of journalists to keep this story, keep it being reported,
Government conspiracies, at least they're all working for the government, so it kind of makes sense that you would have an overarching authority, but, with the media, you have, very conservative companies that, run very conservative outlets or very conservative owners of even outlets that people think are very liberal, whereas in reality, they're more just business friendly, so to speak. But, there's so many companies across America. Just the idea of a media conspiracy is silly. I mean, it's, there's a whole lot more. It would be more realistic, aliens having landed, even us hiding Bigfoot, I think would probably be a little bit more realistic than some kind of election fraud conspiracy.
Don't mess on my Bigfoot.
Yeah, I mean, at least with Bigfoot, the Bigfoot whistleblowers, have got some kind of photographic evidence. They didn't just see a van and they were like, well, Bigfoot could have been in the van. I don't know. There was a van in the forest. What else would it be doing if it wasn't Bigfoot?
Yeah, I mean, there's no other possibility. It's got to be Bigfoot.
Yeah, it's got to be Bigfoot.
One of my favorite conspiracy theory things is I saw something that was people are like, they faked the moon landing, and so there was a website or something or some kind of group that decided, all right, let's track all these conspiracy theories, and not to track them on factual basis, but let's try to figure out from a mathematical perspective how many people would have to keep their mouth shut for this evidence to never get out. And so with the moon landing, it was almost 500,000 people.
Yeah,
and you really think if you've ever played telephone before, you think that many people keep their mouth shut?
Yeah, I mean, I saw another breakdown of it that, saying that it would have actually been, with the technology available at the time, would have been more expensive to fake the moon landing than it would have been to just go to the moon. Somebody, counted up, that basically you'd have to invent technology that didn't exist at the time, to get the photographs the right way, get the video the right way. Just doing that much, the whole process would have actually been more expensive than what we spent on going to the moon. Really the only thing to come out of the moon conspiracies is one pretty good movie starring O.J. Simpson, which has not aged well.
Nope. And hey, it's whenever anyone brings up any of these kind of conspiracies with the moon or 9/11, my response is always well, hey, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd love to sell you. Get you a good deal on it.
Yeah. It's like you said, the conspiracies, how many people would it take? It's a lot easier to believe that, maybe OJ was the killer and he was the only one who had to keep quiet about that, than 500,000 people covering up a moon landing. It's just, math, which seems to be a real problem for us right now with these election results.
Very true. I'd love to see a poll on how many people think, okay, the moon landing was faked, but do you think OJ did it? That'd be good.
Yeah. You could, like I said, there's already a movie tying those two together, so.
Hey, well, if it was made in Hollywood, it's got to be true. Well, right on, man. This is it's been a nice little show.
Yeah, thanks for having me again.
Of course. Hey, man, I'll be happy to have you back too. You're my only friend that'll help me figure out all the technical problems.
Hey, I aim to please. Happy to help.
It's funny as we've been talking, like, I can hear it's for some reason this echo that I've been having on my end has like tripled. Like, so it's like I'm hearing myself when I'm talking, and then I hear myself once, and then I hear myself another time. So it's like almost like a triple echo. So it's been real hard to focus, but you know, we're figuring it out.
I'm glad you made it through it.
And it was actually, there was a lot of times where I was talking and I'm like, I'm losing focus on what I'm actually saying, and it's because I'm hearing it like 3 times in my head.
Yeah, I can imagine that'd be a little hard to get through.
Yeah, it's a little tricky, man. But, you know, hey, this is, you know, this thing, you know, we're all figured out as we go along.
Yeah. Again, thanks for having me.
Right on, dog. Alright, well, that is Season Pete. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll catch you next time.